What's this?
Let's see. Les Marines au Bois Belleux.
You want?
The
You-
Marine.
Oh, they Marins
Les Marines.
Bois Belleau. Marie Belleau would put that over there.
Oh, okay. Well, that's
All right, now.
Let's see. Oh, there's one thing I wanted to ask you. Are you taking? It wasn't a question. Just could you tell me one of your most favorite stories, or you've got lots of them, I bet.
I was going to say, maybe one or two of them I wouldn't tell the ladies or gentlemen. I'm trying to think of, I've got a number of doggone good stories, but good people and so on. I'm trying to think of one, even among our own boys. But at this end, I'll try to think of one.
Okay, but
that,
you'll probably think of one if I ask you.
Well, there was one time here at Belleau Wood when we were in these woods back here, and the Marines were only a half a mile or so up in front of us. We were supposed to be reserved for our own infantry division over here. We were much closer to the Marines. Well, this is one. All right. One night, I guess about the 8th of June, 1918, our two companies that were in reserve were called up here, and the word was that the 23rd Infantry needed help. So we marched out here to the road, and up here, and then took a road over here. And we can see in these woods up ahead, oh, there were the guns were flashing and so on and so on. And then the word came back, they didn't need help, there wasn't ammunition. Well, that wasn't our problem. So we came back, and then we stayed here till daylight. But somewhere that night, this nice young fellow from Yonkers, New York, got a bullet scratch or a shell scratch on the back of his neck, and he went to the first aid station. They put probably washed it with alcohol and daubed it with iodine and put a plaster on it and sent him back. But because he had been at the first aid station, he was considered wounded. That was the 8th of June. The 15th of June, he was killed just before I was wounded. But, I guess 2 months later, I was in the hospital, and they had a Paris edition of the Chicago newspaper there, and I read that here was this lady, Mrs. Farmer of Yonkers, had gone to the movies one night, and in the newsreel, ever heard of newsreel? In the newsreel, she had been amazed to see this column of American soldiers marching by. She said they seemed happy at it, but and one of those soldiers was her husband, this Joe Farmer. And when she got home, in her mailbox was a telegram from the War Department telling her that, they said, we regret to inform you that your son, Private Joseph Farmer, has been reported seriously wounded, and so on and so on. Now this was weeks after he'd been killed. But then when I read that, I knew that he, of course, had been killed. So when I came home in 1919, lately, one Sunday I went up to Yonkers to visit Joe Farmer's mother and brothers and sisters. And she showed me just a few poor souvenirs that had been sent home. And one of those was a little Red Cross bag that we called a toilet bag. It had our razor. And in that was, it was a small tobacco box, empty, in which there were shell holes made by the shell that had killed Joe. So, and she, I don't know when she left, I guess she had learned of his death at the time I got home, but that was just one of them, and I visited her and told her what I could about Joe, which was all the good, which was true. He was a nice fellow. And then, come on, more
Okay. How did the war change you? In what ways?
Yike. Oh, I don't know whether it made me any more religious or not. I wasn't, but one thing, I certainly was no great friend of war, but I realized that our country gets into a war, we've got to fight it out or that'll be the end of it. And so, but I'm no great lover of war.
Right.
Stranger, but I did go back to these old places and enjoyed myself. It was much more fun to visit a
Visit it.
battlefield when you could look around and see and not have to dive into a hole and somebody start to shoot at you. But it's no fun for anybody. I don't blame the French did not fight well in War II.
They were
But
tired.
they had suffered so horribly. I told this much. 1.5 million Frenchmen were killed in battle. And hundreds of thousands of them were just lost. They were buried and never found. And they had, I think, 600,000 men with severely disabled. This soldier I knew whose legs were paralyzed. And then his son, when his son was 17 years old, he got into War II. And shortly after that, he lost a leg and so on. And the French knew what war was from way back. This, ever hear the Franco-Prussian War of
yep.
1870? Well, the French, the Germans invaded this area I'm speaking of. And up there, there was a town there called Freiburg, a town of 300-400 people. And the French, some of the French had to start up guerrilla warfare. And up above that town, several miles, there was a forest. And these, they call them franc-tireurs, or we call them free shooters, or guerrillas. They had gone up and dynamited a railroad bridge that hurt the Germans. And what the Germans came to this nearest town, and they grabbed the mayor, the priest, the school teacher, and 4 prominent citizens, lined them right up against a wall and shot them, just as an example that we would put up with that. And in this cemetery, right after we got there, I saw there was a sort of a little monument to those 10 people. And the Germans justified that by saying that saved a lot of French people by persuading them not to get into trouble.
Wow, sir. Let's see. Oh, I asked you how the war changed you. How do you think it changed the world? Did you think it scared them of war?
Well, I suppose, what it made us do was realize the world was